everyone. I'm Cassie Thompson. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Smartling, and I'm super excited to host this session on global content as a growth strategy and as a growth driver. I'm joined by two excellent panelists, Sue Lewis from Fisher and Paykel and Kevin O'Donnell from Global10x. So they're going to be chatting all about how you can use global content as a way to really grow your business and make an impact. So Sue, I'll hand it over to you to kind of introduce yourself and give a little bit of background on the translation strategy at Fisher and Paykel.
Thanks, Cassie. My name's Sue. I lead an integration program in design group at Fisher and Paykel. At the moment, we are focusing on expanding teams, content types across the business into all markets. So really looking at integrating end-to-end customer journey experiences for all markets we operate in.
Awesome. And Kevin, do you mind giving a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, happy to, Cassie. Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin. I'm an international growth advisor. My background is in product leadership and international expansion. And currently, I help companies on their international expansion journey, help them link localization to business impact, modernize their localization program, and try move from a tactical to a more strategic form of localization.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the content. We'll start right at the beginning with the very basics to make sure we're all on the same page. What does global content really mean? Is it just translation, or are there other elements that we need to take into account? So maybe Kevin, I'll start with you on this, and then Sue can give her thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, global content means avoiding a one-size-fits-all form of localization. So it's not taking one piece of content and just distributing it to everybody in the world. It's understanding that if you're serving lots of different markets, they all have unique needs, and trying to match the needs of users in different markets with the content you're creating. So if you can figure out what those needs are and then use that for your strategy, you'll avoid wasting money. You'll avoid this one-size-fits-all approach. And it means you'll figure out the right consumption trends, preferences across different markets. It's understanding in some markets, blogging is essential. In others, it's newsletters. In others, you need to focus on your SEO strategy or your paid marketing. So it's matching the content you choose to the market needs itself. And it's whether, one piece of content is good enough for the world if you localize it correctly, or if you need to invest in transcreation or local content adaptation. So it's really figuring out the needs of your content to meet your business goals.
I think just reflecting what you've said, Kevin, I think the concept of global content really means delivering that high quality end-to-end localized experience for customers, whatever market they're in. For us, it's from design planning and e-com across our websites to product user guides and self-serve app support. We need the intent and integrity of our brand stories and messaging to be maintained, whatever language, whatever market. It's also about adapting technical terms for a market. I can't mention all the ways that a multi-socket charger is referred to around the world. There are so many. But it's also understanding those market differences, as you say, and reflecting that in the content. So at one end for us, there are different kitchen systems that we specify our products into, with details that architects and designers need to trust. Whatever language we deliver in, the detail has to be crystal clear and perfect. And at the other end, most countries don't have safety switches on plug sockets, while here in New Zealand we do. So when we develop our product content, user our install guides, where once we were focused on the local experience and literally translating content into other languages, we're now on the journey of adapting our approach and terms for specific markets before localizing into target languages. I should say too that we're a global company with teams in all of our key markets. So for our internal customers, our peers, we're localizing our onboarding programs, our training, our sales enablement packs, our installation training and service content, and so on. So global content is very broad in its meaning and depth.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So it's not just about our customers, but also about internal employees and common understanding. I think especially for your company, that's such a luxury brand that needs to have kind of the same consistent service across all your markets. So
Absolutely.
on that point, why do we think global content is such an important part of not just customer satisfaction, but also international growth? How have you, or in your case, Kevin, your clients demonstrated this value? So maybe Sue, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the key message I would share is that global content really transforms a brand from being visible in new markets to being truly present. Because it does help brands connect with people in different markets in a way that feels more authentic, local, relevant, trustworthy, especially when content is thoughtfully localized, not just translated. It shows real respect for the cultural difference, consumer behaviors, language nuances. So it builds that credibility, it boosts engagement, and it really does drive better customer experiences.
Yeah, when I think about it, I think about global content as the opportunity for companies that have a worldwide presence to get a new competitive advantage. It offers them the potential to connect with customers in a near bespoke local voice that simply broad localization doesn't allow you to do that. Um, think about the most valuable companies in the world. More than 50% of their revenue is international, and they're getting that typically the best companies is because they take an adaptive approach to their global content. How I've seen this play out with a couple of companies, often they look to make small changes in content for key markets to demonstrate some wins and then to invest further. So, for example, I've seen it work very often where a marketing campaign is a global marketing campaign and it's translated into multiple languages, but it's not really performing in Japanese or in French because the taglines are simply not working for that language. But if you do use local expertise and adapt it for that market, I've seen the conversion rates shoot up over 100% with that change. Similarly, recently I had an example of a company that was wanted to improve the engagement on their product page on their website, and they had high rates of people leaving. And one of the things we realized is the interactive chat bot on the website was all in English. The rest of the localization was perfectly localized, but this was in English. We spent a very small amount of money localizing that, and there was a 200% improvement in the engagement simply because of that, because it gave that local connection. And that's how it can be this unrealized potential and opportunity for so many companies if they don't look close enough.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, Kevin, around the experience part. You can't just do one piece of content in the journey because there may also be other elements that they're interacting with and experiences. And that feels kind of even more jarring maybe than just the entire experience being in one language. So thinking through those touch points is really important. Um, so we kind of talked about why we think it's valuable, but how do we actually track and measure the impact of global content? So Sue, I know we chose you for this panel because Fisher and Paykel does a great job, is you in particular, of tracking ROI around this area. So talk to me a little bit about how you measure that impact and any advice for others out there who might be interested in doing the same.
Yeah, for sure. I think we went into this with a really clear vision of what we wanted to achieve. And then we determined our key metrics against that. And we use value, velocity, and veracity to really dig into that as kind of the umbrella for ROI. So cost, speed, quality. So in terms of tracking, the reporting is everything. The data that we see in terms of cost, seeing where spend is actually being allocated, whether it's new words, partial words. Smart matching obviously is where there is no cost attributed. So the next layer down from cost is, what are we seeing in terms of the translation memory leverage? How much reuse are we actually experiencing in terms of transitioning into SmartLing and the platform? Those metrics have all gone up really quickly. It's a really rapid increase in TM leverage and reuse. And cost, obviously, the cost efficiencies come from that TM leverage in particular. Speed, being aware of your timeframes end to end from the moment you finalize content in preparation for localization into a target language. What's your time frame using a certain workflow or process? And coming into SmartLing, we did a lot of due diligence on that pre and post. So we've seen changes of 1 to 5 weeks to an average of a 2-day turnaround for some of our assets, our guides. So speed, super important because it means we're getting really critical content out in front of customers as soon as possible, particularly for design planning, where people are making purchase decisions well in advance of builds. And then quality, I think this is really important and perhaps a little of an afterthought after cost, which is very important too. But it's really important that quality is there. So putting in place the reviews that you need to, looking at the data in the platform. If you are using AI specific workflows, and you've got a human edit afterwards, seeing what level of intervention is happening. So the reporting, the data is really critical in seeing what return you're getting for using the platform itself.
Thanks. So yeah, Kevin, you once did an entire webinar on ROI with us and metrics. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this topic as well and what Sue mentioned.
Yeah, I love this topic. What I love about your example, Sue, is it shows the breadth of how global content really can have an ROI in any part of the business. When you think about it, from finance to customer experience, satisfaction, and marketing performance. The way I think about ROI in global content is that no matter what stage your company is at, global content can play a role in moving your business forward. And it's around understanding what is the job the global content is expected to do for your business at that point in time. So if you're a startup or just starting out, it might be around communicating your message, getting reach. And so the ROI is going to be around time to market. It's going to be maybe the cost of expanding from one market to another. How efficiently can you do that when you're on a tight budget, potentially? Slightly larger company, it might be around a marketing performance, acquisition, paid conversion rates on your website, customer satisfaction. And that's where the actual performance of each language in each market is going to translate into revenue. And that if you're not linking your localization, your global content approach to that revenue, then you're potentially going to become irrelevant or just going to get lost in the mix. And having that seat at the table and having that senior influence requires you to make sure that your global content focus is tightly linked to the business objectives at that time. I always think the ROI for your global content should follow the department that you're in. So if you're in a marketing department, it should be contributing to the marketing goals, lead conversion, and so on. If you're in product, it should be helping usability and customer satisfaction and engagement, and you can measure it equivalently. So having those ROIs that are connected to where you're at in the business and the stage of your company, that will really help influence the strategy of your global content.
Yeah, I like that as well, tying it back to the metrics. It sounds like, so you're on in the product area. So that's must be very much tied to what you're doing in the product as well.
Absolutely. So if you think about a touchscreen UI with multilingual content all the way through to a user guide to a website, it all has to gel together and be consistent for the customer. So yeah, absolutely. End to
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, great. And I love the idea there around how much more agile you guys are. For I've heard many times from our product teams that speed is one of the things that they are most interested in because you can't have any lags in launches and things like that. So I think that the increase in speed is definitely a win for your team, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So we talked about all the good things, but what are some challenges that might be faced when you're trying to create global content, and how do you address them? What do you need in order to successfully implement a global content strategy? So, Sue, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, big topic. Um, I think consistency is probably the most fundamental thing that I can think of across different teams, particularly considering content created by one team can be used in many different ways by downstream teams. So consistency is a huge challenge. Maintaining correctness is a challenge. Um, Technology that enables us to have one centralized source of truth is really critical. Having really good foundational linguistic assets, so your market glossaries, style guides, they're really fundamental to everything we do. We're on a journey of developing those and actually sharing them with other departments like engineering. So they can use our glossaries, which are obviously very detailed. They're technical in some aspects in terms of the terminology we use, but they're all very well defined. So we explain to support both linguists and AI understand what terms really mean. So you can imagine for onboarding new engineers into the business, that glossary is a really fundamental piece that will support them in getting to know the work we do and the vernacular we use as a business. The other thing I would say is really having technology in place that enables exploration of different processes and workflows. So everything from machine translation through to transcreation, seeing the output of that, being able to test it, that's really important. And anything that reduces siloed work and workflows, and particularly as we explore using more and more AI solutions, it's really important to have things like a rigorous taxonomy in place. And again, those foundational linguistic assets are so important. Those foundations, those bedrocks, when they're in place and they're used and accessed meaningfully by the people creating content at pace, with quality in mind and trying to get it in front of the customer as soon as possible. Those are the real challenges, I'd say.
Yeah, I really liked what you said, consistency and correctness, for sure. And I also love the idea of using a glossary meant for translation to onboard people to the company. I think that's actually really brilliant. I have not heard of that before, and I think it's a cool thought because we all have our internal jargon that we
Absolutely.
say, and it's a great way to kind of share and impart that knowledge. But Kevin, what are your thoughts on the challenges that your clients have faced in this area?
Yeah, probably the most common challenge I encounter is around alignment and priority. Because so often localization teams are in the middle of multiple departments, multiple teams, and they're dealing with this global content tsunami. They've got so much to deal with, and they've got a very finite budget and finite time, and often not enough of both. So the challenge there is how to figure out the most important piece of content, the most important markets, which content requires more attention, what it's going to do for the company. And the challenge is because sometimes it's whoever shouts loudest gets the most attention, but it could be a sales leader in Asia. They need some particular focus for sales collateral for a big deal. The marketing leader in France needs some help on local content creation there for a campaign they're running. And then a customer support leader needs their help documentation localized into a different language. And these can all pull in different directions. And one of the ways to address this, I always find, is to try to get some top-down agreement on the most important markets, the most important goals, either for this quarter or for this year, and let those trickle down to everybody and have one way to align on goals and to help those priority decisions when you can only spend money in one direction, or you have to decide which is going to get my higher priority at the moment. So that's a key thing, figuring out where your budget should be allocated. Um, to help with that, and where technology can play a great role in solving this challenge is in scale. I always think that's the main point of having technology for global content is, get the humans out of the way. Humans should be doing the value added work of the content, but not the scaling work. So if the technology can help you scale at low cost, that eases the burden for sure. It also allows you then to take your cost matrix and your prioritization and decide which of these content profiles need AI localization, which needs transcreation, which needs this local voice added, and which, needs something brand new. So adding to that, and I would say if you're in a company with multiple sources of content, it can be a lot of overhead from a project management point of view. Certainly multiple content sources and streams and overlapping times. I think therefore a workflow orchestration and automation is key to invest in. Again, so you can shift your focus towards the most important areas and avoid this one size fits all to your global content strategy.
Yeah. I really liked what you said about prioritization of markets. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are maybe even just starting out with translation struggle with. I'm wondering if either of you have any recommendations on how you think through that prioritization, or what are the strategies to figure out what markets are most important or most accessible to you.
I'll give a quick one on that one. I think it's helpful sometimes when you talk about prioritization, there's a fear that you're going to designate some languages or markets as low priority. And it's not about that. It's about deciding how do you allocate your focus to certain markets and certain languages. And so one way to think about it is to create a couple of language tiers. You might have tier 1, 2, and 3. And your tier 1 languages, frankly, should be where your business has the biggest focus area. It might be where your sales team are located or based. It might be on the bets that your company is making on where they expect to see revenue expansion. And naturally, that should get your biggest focus. And you might say, we'll put 60% of our budget, our effort to these tier 1 markets, whatever they may be. And then tier 2 will often need a different level of focus. It might be markets where you have partner sellers or you have a different go-to-market motion. And so by gathering them together, you can have different content focus and different technology focus or priority focus to those markets. And then there's probably some markets or languages where you want good quality, reliable, but you're not going to invest in transcreation, or you're not going to go the extra mile in local content creation at this time. And so by having this tiering approach, it opens the door to a lot more decisions and optionality for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done exactly what you've just outlined, Kevin. Having a tiered approach to aligned language. Sometimes one language will serve multiple markets. That's another key point I would make. But certainly we've taken that tiered approach too.
Great. I love to hear that. Kevin's theory and in practice as well. So that's great to hear. All right, we'll close it out with some best practices and tips. So we've talked a lot about the benefits of global content strategy, the challenges of it, but if you were to kind of talk to somebody who is just starting out or maybe doesn't think they're being successful, what would you tell them has been most impactful for you? So Sue, do you mind starting?
Sure. I would say be open and prepared to share and share again and again. That localization isn't just literal translation from one language to another. It is a journey and an education piece for many. So that's one piece of advice I would give. Understand the difference between translation through to transcreation. The other thing I would really highlight is context. Context is everything. In our case, it's really critical because we do use quite technical terms. We need to make sure that the context in which they're used is extremely clear, both for humans and AI. Just an example, the word light in our world has more than 70 distinct usage patterns. So in appliances, you can imagine we have literal use, such as illumination, light, and then we have metaphorical use, so weight, load, energy, efficiency, usage. So we've got LED lights, light load, lightly soiled, control panel light, drum light. I won't go on, but you need to ensure that that context for the use is super clear to enable optimal localization. So context really does matter.
Awesome. Kevin, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, maybe to reiterate some of the things I was saying earlier, I think you must align your priorities of your global content with your business strategy. So figure out what is the most important thing for your company at this time and ensure that your global content is lined up behind those. Secondly, decide how you are measuring success. And the measure of success should be linked to the business impact. And if you can find one or two, you don't need 10 measures, but one or two measures that will have clear deliverables for your business, then you can share that broadly with your whole company and they will understand the impact you're having. And thirdly, if you're, I see so many teams who are swamped with production overhead and execution. And it's difficult for them to break out of that everyday mold and to think about strategy or to think about having this impact on their senior leadership. And I always say, if that's your situation, start small. Find one thing you can do that is linked to your business. Find one additional area of focus and priority and do that, measure it, iterate, and then build upon that and do more. You don't need to wholesale throw out what you're doing today and find something brand new.
Great. Thank you both so much. This was great. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. So thanks so much, Kevin and Sue. Have a great day,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.